Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Tuesday, September 23rd, 2025. Colonel Bill Astore joins us now. Colonel, always a pleasure, my dear friend. Thank you for joining us. I want to talk to you about whether or not Israel is truly an ally of the United States. But before we get there, in the now nearly universal recognition of the state of Palestine, what is your view as to the geopolitical significance of this? Is it just performative, or is it likely to provoke some change?
Yeah, I hope it's more than performative. But what worries me is that it took so long for this recognition to come. And when we look at Gaza right now, what we see is a territory that's been reduced largely to rubble. And so the recognition of rubble is just a sad state of affairs. I mean, we also know that Israel is rapidly expanding into the West Bank. So just as states like Britain and France finally decide to recognize the idea of a Palestinian state, there's not much left to recognize. If only the recognition would come with steps after that, concrete steps, like an embargo on weapons to Israel, that would really make a difference.
Would it make a difference if the General Assembly, as it once did with South Africa, because it was an apartheid state, were to suspend Israel's membership in the UN because it is an apartheid state?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I hope the United Nations does take that kind of action. It's desperately needed. I mean, when you look at, I think most Americans, I hope, have a sense of what's happening in Gaza. I mean, mass starvation. Every day you read about more Palestinians being killed and wounded. I mean, recently we had an IDF general finally come out and say that, they've killed and wounded Israel roughly 250,000 Palestinians. That's a number that's not allowed in the American press. And yet here you have an Israeli general basically saying, yeah, we took the gloves off. Nothing's restricting our ability to destroy Gaza. And that's exactly what's happening.
How about on the other side of Israel, where there's some sort of a semblance of government where the Palestinian Authority is? These are the people whose visas were denied by Secretary of State Marco Rubio in direct violation of the UN Charter, which requires the host country to admit the bona fide representatives of all membership countries. But is the recognition of that as a sovereign state and as a government of some geopolitical significance?
Yeah, well, you hope so. Except for the fact that Israel just seems to want to, to bomb or to kill, any kind of Palestinian delegation that would have a chance at negotiating some kind of a ceasefire. As long as the Trump administration stands behind Israel with a blank check of support, you don't really see much of an opportunity or a chance for dramatic change. Let's hope powerful statements from the United Nations, as well as more forthright examples. Not just recognition of a Palestinian state, but again, concrete actions against Israel that would shift Israel's strategy, if such a thing is possible.
What remains of the so-called international rules-based order?
Right. Well, it's a case where it seems as if the idea that we are, that we are law-abiding, and that the laws apply to the weak as well as to the strong, that just doesn't seem to be the situation at all. And it's the United States and Israel in particular who have been undermining the very idea of a rules-based order. We've made a mockery of it. So it's in shreds as a result.
Didn't we write it? Didn't we craft it? Didn't we boast about it? Didn't we
Right.
attempt to impose it on other countries?
Right. Well, I go back to 1944 and the promise of the United Nations. I mean, these were the high ideals that the United States used to advocate. And that was the country that I was proudest of. That was the country I thought I was serving when I served 20 years in the Air Force. I believe in the U.S. Constitution. I believe in international law. But those are ideas. This is something that we're abandoning as a country. And it's not only putting ourselves at risk as a democracy, but it's putting the whole idea of an international order based on laws in danger as well.
Colonel Astore, does the Netanyahu regime follow any moral code or international standards, or does it just kill and slaughter whoever it wants?
Well, I think it's a case of of might making right. I always come back. I think of the Romans and the criticism of Tacitus that he put in a Germanic chieftain, where they said of the Rome and the empire, they said they create a desert and call it peace. And that is, to me, what Israel is doing with Gaza. Israel is attempting to wipe out any traces of Palestinian presence there, and then they'll call it peace. And that is basically the rule of the strong. There is no morality there. This is just a case of might, and at least in their eyes, making right.
Why does the United States always seem to be fighting or financing foreign wars?
Well, yeah. Well, they're profitable. They're profitable for a few. That's certainly part of it. And I always come back to Eisenhower's warning about the military-industrial complex. Of course, he added Congress to the mix as well. So that's part of it. But part of it, too, is that war contributes to authoritarianism. War allows the rule of the strong over the weak. War is something. Chris Hedges wrote a great book called "War is a Force that Gives Us Meaning." I mean, this is a way of controlling America as well, and controlling what we spend our money on and what we're able to do as a country. We're throwing away opportunity to have better education, better health care. Everything else, the promise of America, is being disappeared under the rubble of whether it's in Iraq or Afghanistan or now in Gaza.
Yeah, but why? Why don't presidents see that? Why do presidents as liberal as Barack Obama and as conservative as Donald Trump want to kill people instead of build bridges? And
Right.
I mean both kinds of bridges, metaphoric bridges and real bridges.
Yeah, it is strange, isn't it, that Barack Obama once boasted that it surprised him. One of the things that surprised him as president is how good he would get at killing people.
Yes, he did boast about that.
And that is
And Colonel, he targeted Americans with his drones.
right. And that's why what we're seeing now with the Trump administration just basically summarily executing people on boats without any knowledge of whether or not they're guilty or not, without any kind of due process, is so outrageous. And I know you, obviously, as a judge, you're very familiar with the law, and the idea that we are not judge, jury, and executioner. There's a process here, and if we don't follow this process, we just descend into utter barbarity.
We do descend into barbarity. I mean, this is Orwellian when the president says, well, they were about to commit a crime, so I executed them before they could commit it. About to commit a crime, they were in a speedboat that has a distance of about 50 miles, and they were 1,300 miles from the United States of America, from anything even owned by the United States. If they had fired at the Coast Guard or the Navy, that'd be a different story. But they didn't. They were just evaporated by it. In my opinion, Pete Hegseth ordered murders, and whoever pulled those triggers should have refused to have done so and resigned their military commissions.
Right. No, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see whether our military begins to reflect on their oath of office, where they do, all of us solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. This is something that we take very seriously. There's supposed to be a constitutional process here. It's not supposed to be just following orders blindly. I mean, we in the military have an obligation to think about what we're doing and whether or not the orders that we're being given are legal. And I should hope that those who are in the military now are thinking, very hard about this.
I think we're in a state of a constitutional crisis, and the public doesn't know it, and the media won't recognize it. Congress doesn't articulate a peep when the president kills people. He says, oh, they were sent by Venezuela. Did I miss something? Did Congress declare war on Venezuela? Of course not.
No.
And the courts just keep giving Trump all the power he wants to do everything he wants, the Constitution notwithstanding. Now, in fairness to the courts, this issue hasn't been brought to the courts. I don't even know how this could get to the courts.
Right.
But Congress could do something about this. It doesn't do anything. The only people I've heard complain are Senator Rand Paul and Congressman Thomas Massie. That's it.
Right. All credit to them.
Yes, all credit to them. It take a lot of heat from their Republican colleagues when they do that. I got to ask you this, and it sounds raw. Do we still have a democracy in this country, or is the government controlled by the donor class, by the Zionists?
Yeah. I guess I'd like to call it a quasi-democracy or a democracy that's withering away. And I think that's reflected by the fact that what we want, what the American people generally want, is not reflected in what our government is doing. So we have a corporate capture of the government, a government of the special interests and by the special interests and for them. And so, this is something that, we're all familiar with the Citizens United decision by the Supreme Court, where it basically said that money is speech. And once you enshrine money as speech, well, you give a billionaire a lot more speech than you and I have.
Right.
That is not a democracy.
Right. That would be the Zionist billionaire oligarchs that are now taking over TikTok.
Right.
To a person, they are billionaires, and to a person, they are Zionists. And Oracle, which helps the Israelis find people to kill, is going to be running the algorithm. Where are we going with this? Why isn't there an outrage over this? We were better off when the Chinese ran it.
Right. I know. I'm not on TikTok much. It's past my generation, I suppose. But we know that on TikTok, we saw a lot of videos that actually brought home to us the reality of what was happening in Gaza, which is exactly why they're cracking down on access to TikTok, because you see the raw video footage and you hear testimony from Palestinians about exactly what is happening. And that is not something apparently that our so-called rulers, they don't want that to be allowed.
Does Trump control Netanyahu, or does Netanyahu control Trump?
I see it more as Bibi having way too much influence over Trump. It's Trump who seems more cowed by Netanyahu rather than vice versa. It always amazes me. Isn't Netanyahu coming this year for the fourth time? I heard something like that. And every time he comes to address Congress, we treat him as if he's the dictator of our country with all of the bipartisan standing ovations in Congress. So, I see Trump as being more under his thumb.
I wonder what would happen if Trump said to Netanyahu, we're going to stop sending you military supplies. All those members of Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, whose campaigns were financed by AIPAC and their colleagues, would revolt and enact some veto-proof legislation, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just see Trump lacking the kind of backbone or the kind of moral spine, actually, to take that kind of an action. I think he also recognizes that would put him under an incredible amount of pressure, and I don't see Trump going there. He's not that kind of a man.
Well, I think you're right. I don't see him doing it as well. What does the United States gain, if anything, by its relationship to Israel?
Right. Well, yeah. During the Cold War, I thought Israel was a strong American ally, and we always used to talk about Israel as kind of like our unsinkable aircraft carrier there in the Middle East that helped safeguard American defense to a certain extent. Now, if that were ever true, it is certainly not the case now. If anything, Israel, with its genocide in Gaza and all of its other policies, threatens our national security.
It certainly wasn't true when Israeli jets attacked the USS Liberty and killed 34 or 35 sailors and wounded 100 some odd others. And LBJ told Robert Strange McNamara, that was his middle name, the Secretary of Defense, to turn the planes around and let the Israelis have their way. So the American presidential fear of Israeli political power and financial influence goes back at least to that era, which is before your time and before mine. I was a student when that happened.
I remember reading about the Liberty, and when I read about the 6-Day War, and this was in the 1970s for me, and I just remember being so shocked by it. It's like, how did we as Americans allow Israel to get away with this, and just basically accept their lame excuse that it was a case of mistaken identity when we knew that wasn't the case.
Yeah. Did you serve in Afghanistan?
I did not, no.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll ask you about this anyway. President Trump wants a Bagram Air Force Base back in American control because we built it and paid for it. Tell that to the Russians that we built it and paid for it.
Yeah, I think President Trump has forgotten who lost the Afghan war. It's typically not the losers who get to dictate the terms. So in this case, there's a little bit of magical thinking and fantasy going on. The idea that the Taliban, the rulers of Afghanistan, would just say, "Sure, come on back, America. You can have your air base back from which you can launch attacks on us." Is just completely ludicrous. It's even more absurd than trying to pick up Greenland or make Canada part of the United States.
Right. I think the Republicans talked them out of the Canada idea because it would tip the balance in the House of Representatives and the Senate, no matter how you divided it up. Right. I'm fascinated with all the exposure to harm that the national security of the United States has because of our obeisance to Israel. And the opposite of that is the argument that the Israeli apologists make in the United States.
No, absolutely. The idea that Israel is somehow making us safer is obviously not the case at all. In fact, I just see this everything that's happened over the last couple of years, since the October 7th attack and the ongoing genocide in Gaza has just exposed much more harshly the way in which American policy is not driven by the law. It's not driven by morality. It's not driven by civil rights. It's driven by pure naked power concerns. And this, I just heard today that supposedly we want, regime change in Venezuela. So the whole idea there, I'm sure, is that regime change means that all of the oil reserves of Venezuela will become, open to exploitation by multinational corporations with headquarters here in the United States.
Probably, you're probably right, Colonel, and that's probably the reason that Trump is picking fights with the Venezuelan civilians, whom he says are narco terrorists and unworthy of life. Maybe he's hoping for some sort of a response on the part of the Venezuelan military. I don't know what their military is like. I think they'd probably be ill-advised to take on the United States Navy, but Trump might very well be wanting to provoke them. Back to Afghanistan, it was his Secretary of State, then Mike Pompeo, a fierce and staunch Zionist and neocon, if ever there was one,
right,
who negotiated the departure deal from Afghanistan, which included letting them keep the airport. Now, there was a government of Afghanistan at the time, but he didn't negotiate with the government. He negotiated with the Taliban.
right.
And part of that negotiation was open up the prisons and let all the people that we arrested, get out. And they got out and they took over the government. And now, for better or for worse, they run the government. It's absolutely far more authoritarian and dictator-like than it was before we invaded. And now he thinks he's going to get that air base back. What did you think of the United States facilitating the bombing of a residential neighborhood in Doha, Qatar, one of our allies? I mean, we know that couldn't have happened without American intelligence and even American military support, because the Qatar radar system is American, the Qatar air defenses are American, and they were all down that day.
Right, right. Well, if I was living in Saudi Arabia or any other Middle Eastern country, I think what I would learn from that, not that they necessarily needed any reminder, is that you can't trust America. You can't trust us because
Right.
we will do what Israel wants, including in this case allowing a strike in an Arab country that is actually an ally.
Should we be expecting the U.S. to resume bombing Tehran as soon as Netanyahu decides to pull off another sneak attack?
Yeah, no, it's more than possible. That it's amazing to me that we still seem to have unfinished business with Iran from 1979 and the hostage crisis under Jimmy Carter. It just seems as if the saying is, as they said, real men want to go to Tehran. This is in the Iraq War back in 2003. They had this grand scheme in the United States, the neocons did, that Iran was the ultimate prize to overthrow. And this is just ambition to the point of foolishness, because we've already seen the disastrous nature of our intervention in Iraq. I mean, Iran is a far more capable country militarily, much larger. We need to find a way to practice some diplomacy, but apparently the emphasis now is on the Department of War, and the Department of State is basically just a small component of our newly branded Department of War.
Both of which run by ardent Zionists. I wonder if anybody whispers sense into President Trump's ears. Maybe Tulsi Gabbard when they let her in to the Oval Office. Colonel, it's a pleasure, my dear friend. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you can come back and visit with us again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Judge, for having me on again.
Thank you. And keep writing those great essays. I devour them, and they are fabulous.
Oh, thanks so much.
Fabulous. All the best to you, sir. And coming up later today, Matt Ho returns at 2 o'clock, Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski at 3, Scott Ritter at 4. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.